Hi everyone, I'm That Embroidery Girl and welcome back to another embroidery video, and this time it's how to make runner beans, and I made it out of that cheap thread that I got from Amazon, so I'm not sure if it's a fail. Okay, so I've got a very light brown here. I've got a couple of different greens. It's really important, like a light, a mid and a dark, and I've got a really nice light blue, a yellow and possibly a white. So I'm going to be using Dana's needles a lot for this project. So I've got a really long one, kind of short one, a couple of pins and this fine embroidery needle that you can see. And I'm going to start off by putting the Dana's needle in the fabric like so, and then either side in like a triangle position, just two any needles or pins. And I'm going to use this mid green, and I'm going to use a lot of it because this is what's going to form the basis of the woven picot. So I'm going to come up and come round in this triangle position, and then I'm going to add a couple more pins, and again I'm going to come up and down and then come up one more time. I'm going to put a buttonhole stitch here just to secure so that we have a nice anchor point. And then I'm going to take the thread around the needle and I'm just going to start weaving. So the weaving process is under, over, and you've probably seen this from previous videos. It's really super easy. Be mindful when you're weaving, because you've got such a long length of thread, there is a real tendency for it to get stuck on the tops of the needles or on the bottoms of the needles and the pins. You'll notice when I start weaving, I'm initially weaving in between these first two pins, and then as I progress, I'm weaving in between the pins and the needles until I can begin weaving in almost a straight line, like here. As your weave progresses, it's going to get tighter. Remove your pins and let's fold it up and see how it looks. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to define the tip and give it a little point like so. I'm going to grab myself a fine embroidery needle and I'm going to take a full strand of the same coloured green floss. And I'm using a full strand because I'm going to actually stitch the top of this woven picot and I want to reinforce. So you can see I'm just going through two bits, and because it's the same colour, it's really pretty unnoticeable. A couple of stitches here, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So a couple more reinforcing stitches, just making sure that it's super tight and it's not going to fray. And just snip it off. Now I'm going to use a darker green, two strands with the same fine needle, and I'm going to start embroidering just the tip part of this line, so the very top part of the line, just to add a little bit of depth and also to reinforce here, because this is where the pins were. The weave isn't as tight as I would like it, so just a couple of extra stitches and it's going to add a little bit of depth too. Okay, so once we're done, it should look something like this. So I'm going to start my peas now. I'm going to need a big fat Dana's needle and two strands of this lime green floss knotted at the bottom, so you have 4 strands. And I'm going to start by coming up through the hood, hiding that knot, and then come down in a similar place and begin wrapping loads of this thread around the needle. I've actually put around 5 or 6 wraps on this needle, and I'm then going to bring it back through the woven picot only. Don't go through the fabric because it's going to create too much bulk. Pull the French knot wraps tight to the woven picot and then just pull through, and then on the back push it through the weaves so it's undetectable, and then come up where you want your next pea to be. Repeat that process 2 more times and then bring the thread back through the fabric. And then I'm just going to take a fine strand of this thread, the same colour as the peas, and I'm just going to stitch into these peas just to make them more steady inside the pod. I'm going to do it to all of them. As you can see, I'm going to put a couple of stitches in just to make sure that they sit nice and I like what I see. And I'm then going to be able to use the same piece of thread to attach all of this to the fabric. And this is done in a really fine thread so that it sits nice and flush to the fabric. So I'm pretty happy with that. That looks really okay. So I'm going to start a drizzle stitch. I'm going to place the needle through the top hood bit here with this dark green, and I'm going to start some loops. If you don't know how to do drizzle stitches, please do check out my Instagram. You can see, follow at That Embroidery Girl. And once I'm happy with the amount of loops on there, I'm just going to pull it through. So I've got this little stalk right there. And I'm going to finish this stalk off by taking that thread and pulling it down. And I'm going to do another drizzle stitch here. So I've got the thread's already up, and I'm just going to add these loops over the needle like so. I'm going to add loads of loops because I actually want those little curly things that sometimes appear on sweet peas. Again, just bringing the needle down here at this point and stretching it out a bit, curling it, seeing where I like it, and then once I'm in the position where I'm happy, I'm just going to go ahead and couch that down. So here you can see me just using the same thread. I'm using this fine lime green with a fine needle, and I'm just couching all of this down. I'm going to take another lime green piece of thread, and I'm actually going to do another cast on stitch, and this one is really wispy and really, it's like those little fine bits that you get on the sweet peas, so it's really messy, as you can see here, not pulled tight at all. Lots and lots of loops. And once I'm happy with the amount of loops, just thread the needle back through and then just pull all the thread back. And I'm just going to stretch this out again so that I have this really wispy part that they have on some of the sweet peas, like the over the top curly bit. Okay, so once I'm happy with that wispy bit, I'm just going to couch it into place by catching some of the loops. I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm going to draw like a little stalk that it goes on and a couple of circles. And I'm going to start another sweet pea very, very near to my original one, doing exactly the same process. So we've made the same shape woven picot and we're just filling it in, weaving, under and over. And we're going to repeat exactly the same process, stitching the top and adding the French knot peas. I'm only going to add 2 peas here. I want a smaller pod, but you can do any size you want. Okay, so I'm going to take this French knot actually through the fabric. It doesn't matter and it won't add too much bulk as I'm only adding 2. Now I'm going to come up with 2 strands of dark green, come up, go down, come up. This is obviously 2 strands with a knot at the bottom, and I'm going to do a double cast on stitch. So I'm going to take one side over the needle and then the other side over the needle. This essentially is the same start as all of the other stitches, like your cast on stitches or your bullion stitches, but instead of wrapping the needle or doubly putting the cast on over, I am doing one side and then the other. It's a really, really cool stitch to do like 3D sort of leaf work or creatures' bodies, particularly insects and stuff. I'm going to carry on adding loops until I'm happy with the length. And once I'm happy with the length, I'm just going to measure it and make sure that it's going to fit the section. And that looks pretty perfect. So I'm going to pull the needle through. Watch out for tangles because this stitch really does promote lots of tangles on your thread. I'm going to pull it down nice and tight, and then I'm actually going to loosen it before I push the needle through the fabric. I want to maintain a level of 3D, but I don't want it to be too super tight or too super loose. So just play with it. And then once I'm happy, I'm just going to bring the needle through the fabric. I'm going to do the exact same stitch on the other side of the peas in a pod. You can see me here. This is going to be a fairly short one. I don't necessarily want it to be too curved like the other side. Okay, so blue floss now. I'm going to do exactly the same stitch, double cast on stitch here and here. And then I'm going to start a little flower double cast on stitch. So lots of stitches, around about 9 I think I done, nice and loose loops. Once I'm happy, pull the needle and thread through and pull it down to the fabric. You'll see it's a little bit wispy, that's kind of what I want. And I'm going to do 2 more of these stitches so that we have 3 petals in total, and you'll see that makes a really nice little flower. So I'm going to just add a little couching stitch here. I just come up in the middle because it was kind of flapping around everywhere. So you can do that with these, just couch them down. And I'm going to add 3 more flowers like so. Then I'm going to take a nice bright yellow, 2 or 3 wraps around the needle, and I'm just going to bring that French knot down. And you'll see all of our little flowers now have a nice yellow middle. So with the brown, I'm just going to do a simple chain stitch. So all I'm doing is making a loop, catching the loop, and making more loops. I'm just going to draw another one of these little wavy lines and do a cast on stitch here. And then I'm just going to finish off this by bringing in some dark green and doing a single cast on stitch, making it nice and loose, and then I'm just going to couch it down. Okay, so here's our final 2 couching stitches going in, and this is the final design. What do you think? You like it? You don't? Like cheap thread? Don't like cheap thread? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It helps this channel grow so much, and I'll see you soon.